My name's Jeff Turner. For years, I was a professional counterfeiter of U.S. Federal Reserve notes until ultimately I was indicted federally on July 23rd, 2019, and eventually sentenced and went to prison for that. I guess it all started when I was probably like 16 years old, I would say. I started counterfeiting driver's licenses, fake IDs. And it was just for my own thing to buy like beer as a kid, you know what I mean? By the time I was 19 years old, I started attempting to counterfeit currency. And I think originally it was just kind of like a photocopy type thing. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no experience with it. They looked horrible, and it pretty much went nowhere until about 6 months later. I ended up going to a Barnes & Noble and finding this book, The Art of Making Money, about a counterfeiter up in Chicago named Art Williams. I read that book, and it kind of explains the process that he did to make his counterfeit bills. And he would sandwich two sheets together to embed a strip and a watermark, and used chromaflare chameleon car paint to make the color shifting ink. And, you know, so that kind of inspired me to attempt counterfeiting currency again in more of a sophisticated manner. Basically, the first time I started it, I wasn't even worried about security features. Like, my thinking was just print these bills so I can go, like, buy weed, you know, in a parking lot in the dark, and just hope to get away with it, you know, and whatever, just kind of more to, like, rip people off. Because, I mean, I was 19 years old. I didn't really have a plan or anything like that. So, but after I read The Art of Making Money, I kind of started to think about it more, you know, ways to actually beat these security features and make counterfeit bills that were good enough to actually pass at the store or this or that. Anyway, I ended up finding a decent recipe when I was 19, and you know, I did it for a little while, sold some to a friend of mine's dad's friend, who was kind of like you know, a career criminal himself. You know, and I was selling him these bills for about 6 months or so. Maybe like once a month I'd give him you know, a certain amount, and he'd, you know, pay me for them about 20 cents on the dollar or so. You know, and I did that for like 6 months. I made some money. For being 19, it was cool, you know what I mean? I could print for a few days or whatever, and then go sell this envelope and get like $1,000 off one little deal, and I did that for you know, about 6 months. But then my friend that linked me with his dad's buddy ended up overdosing and dying, so that kind of severed that connection. And you know, I didn't want to get caught. I made some money, so I just kind of stopped for a while, got into selling more dope or whatever at that time. So fast forward to, what was it, probably about 2013 or so. So at that point, I was about 25, 26 years old. Through all of this, I developed quite a drug habit. You know, oxys were big in Florida at that time. I was sponsoring people to go to pain management clinics and selling a lot of pills, so I basically just developed a pretty bad drug addiction to opiates in general. So, you know, about 2013, I met, you know, this girl that she didn't really do drugs. She had a couple kids from a previous marriage. I kind of settled down, started dating her. We ended up deciding to, like, I kind of wanted to get away from the drugs scene in Florida, because it was just getting very chaotic back then. A lot of people were dying, going to prison, just, you know, the whole thing that comes along with drug addicts and all that. So me and this girl end up moving up to Knoxville, Tennessee, to kind of get away from the Florida drug scene, try and start fresh. We moved to Knoxville. I got a job at a sign company called Sycamore Sign Service. They were a fast-growing sign company in Knoxville. Now, right now, they're like the biggest sign company in Knoxville, but I started there when they were just starting to get big. You know, when things were going good, you know, I was still, I think I brought like Suboxone with me to get off drugs, and then shortly there, I was clean for a little bit, and then shortly thereafter, I ended up meeting this like gigantic pill dealer in Knoxville, so I ended up getting back on drugs. But I was in Knoxville working a steady job. It was a good job, and I wasn't a part of like the drug scene, you know what I mean? I was still using drugs, but I was going to work with my girlfriend, her 2 kids. It was a lot more stable life than what I was living in Florida. And you know, the sign company went great. I ended up getting promoted to the lead serviceman. You know, I got my own company truck and phone, and you know, things were going good. We were renting a house. Everything was pretty stable for a while. Me and the girl ended up getting married, having a couple kids of our own, and you know, so years go by, everything's going good. My boss at the sign company ended up, you know, he kind of knew I had a drug problem, but he decided to kind of just look the other way because I was a good worker. You know, I did what I was supposed to do, everything. He brought me into the office one day and basically said, like, I saw on the truck's GPS tracker that you're going to these questionable neighborhoods and obviously buying drugs or whatever. He basically said, you know what I mean, I'm not going to fire you, but just stop doing that. Don't take my truck to those neighborhoods anymore. So, of course, you know, I agreed. That's fine. And I think it was probably like a month or 2 after that conversation with him. I was working on my day off, doing a service call by myself, and I had a newborn baby at home, so I was hardly getting any sleep. And I ended up falling asleep at the wheel and rolling the bucket truck. You know, totaled it. Got some staples in my head. Luckily, I didn't like get seriously injured because it was a real bad accident. But because of that, he decided to let me go. I mean, I think with the drug problem I had, you know, he kept me because I was a good worker, but then I wrecked a truck and it just kind of became a liability for him or whatever. I don't blame him. You know, it is what it is. But nonetheless, he fired me from that job. So at this point, I have, you know, 2 stepchildren, 2 children of my own with my now wife, and I just lost my job. The lease was up in our house in like a couple months, so I was in a bad situation. I didn't have a lot of money saved, you know what I mean, because obviously I was still using drugs, so like a lot of my excess, you know, money went to supporting my drug habit. So I basically, you know, found myself in this situation, a wife, 4 kids, the lease is up in our house in a couple months, and I'm unemployed with not a lot of money. So basically, my way of thinking was like, even if I look for a new job, it's going to take at least a couple weeks, and then they hold the first paycheck, it's going to take a couple more weeks, and you know, even if I tried to do the right thing and just find another job, I would still, like, I'd miss rent. The landlord wouldn't want to renew my lease because I missed rent, and then I'd have to find a new house, and with first and last and security deposit, I just wouldn't have the money. So I basically, like, needed to figure out a way to make a couple $1,000s real quick, or, you know, whatever. So with my past experience with the counterfeiting thing, I thought that was probably the best route to go. I've always kind of had, I hate to say it, but kind of a criminal mentality. You know, do whatever it takes to get by, make money. You know, I'm always down for a hustle, or, you know, an opportunity to make money, legal or not. So in that situation, I considered selling drugs, but in Knoxville, I didn't know a lot of people because I just moved up there, and I was still using drugs. I knew a few addicts and dealers, but I wasn't really in the mix in Knoxville. So I decided not to get into selling drugs or whatever. So I decided for the counterfeiting thing. So within those 2 months before my lease was up, I kind of figured out, I tweaked the methods I was using before when I was 19, kind of came up with a very good recipe to make counterfeit $100 bills. I ended up meeting this guy at that sign company, who he also got fired before me, but I met him at the sign company. You know, he got fired, I got fired, maybe 6-8 months later. You know, after he got fired, a friend of mine called me and said, hey, if you need any, heroin, call this dude. He's got, whatever you want. So I called him. I was like, hey, this is Jeff from Sycamore Sign Service. You remember me? He's like, yeah, of course, whatever. I was like, hey, this dude told me to call you. We don't really speak on the phone, but basically he was like, yeah, it's cool, come over. So I went over to his house. The first, I go knock on the door, and this random dude answers. And, I assume it's his roommate or whatever, because he lived in a big house in West Knoxville. It's kind of like the nicer side of town. So this dude answers his door. I assume it's his roommate, and I walk in, and he goes to pat me down. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? You know what I mean? Like, why are you fucking patting me down? He patted me down, brought me in the back. I see this guy that I knew from the sign company. And I was like, I was told you got some heroin. And he's like, yeah, he opens up this safe, pulls out just a freezer bag full of fucking dope. And I was shocked. I was like, holy shit, bro. Like, I didn't know you had it like that. So, turns out he ended up, after he got fired from the sign company, he ended up stumbling across the plug from Atlanta, like a really high-level, drug dealer from Atlanta who was dealing in coke, meth, heroin, weed, codeine, cough syrup, Opanas, Roxys, all this stuff. So he, since I knew him before at the sign company, he became quite the large drug dealer. So I got some H from him. He, and I bring up my situation. I'm like, listen, I got fired from Sycamore. My lease is up in a couple months. I need to make money quick. Of course, he offered to front me some dope to get on my feet, but I didn't want to go that route, so I bring up the counterfeiting thing to him. I'm like, well, listen, I used to counterfeit $100 bills down in Florida. I was, kind of successful with it. I'm going to start doing it again. And, he was excited for it. He's like, well, what do you need? How can I help? I want some. So I told him, give me a few $100s, front me some dope so I'm not sick, and I'll bring you an envelope with these counterfeit $20 bills. I'll bring you like $5 grand of fake 20s, and you can re-up with them, do whatever you want with them. So he did that. He gave me a few $100 to buy a nice printer, to buy some supplies I needed, and I think he gave me like a few grams of heroin to stay well, not be dope sick, while I sat at home and edited these images and made some bills. So I did that. I ended up going home. I had some dope. I got a printer. I got what I needed, and I made this envelope of $5 grand in fake 20s. I go bring it to him. He takes it. You know what I mean? He's happy with them. They look good. And he used them to re-up. I think he gave some to some girls he knew, and they were busting them throughout the city. Whatever, just whatever he did with them. But so I basically, that first time, I just gave him that $5 grand for free because he fucked with me. He gave me some free heroin. He gave me some money to start up this little endeavor I'm doing. But he wanted more after that. And I told him, I was like, I want to start doing hundreds, because these 20s, just, it's not enough money. So I start perfecting these hundreds, experimenting with different methods to make these hundreds look as good as possible. Kind of right at the time when but I was still selling him 20s, but I was working on these hundreds. By the time I got these hundreds, like, good, I was confident with them. His house gets raided. He goes to jail. like the police got him with meth and heroin and counterfeit money. I heard he was in jail. I look him up online, see his mugshot. I see possession of counterfeit currency on his charges. So it spooked me. You know what I mean? I was like, oh fuck, I hope he's not cooperating on me or whatever. I didn't know. You know what I mean? You never know in that situation. And about a week later, I suspected that the authorities, the Secret Service or the local police or whatever, I suspected that they went through my trash cans at my house in Maryville, Tennessee. So that freaked me out. So at this point, me and my wife and kids ended up just going to a hotel. Our lease was about up anyway, and I thought I might be being watched by somebody. So we went to a hotel, and out of I didn't want to break these bills myself. I wanted to just sell them to him. But now he's in jail. I'm in a hotel, have no one else to sell these bills to. So I decide I need to go, break these bills myself to make money. You know what I mean? But the hundreds I was making at that point were good. You know what I mean? I was confident in them. They weren't perfect, but I found a way to where they marked in a watermark. I created this color shifting pigment to where the little 100 in the corner shifted as you tilted it from green to black. So I was confident with how they looked. So the first time I went to go break a bill, I went into a Taco Bell off Alcoa Highway, right across from the airport. You know, it was like, I think they closed at like midnight. I walk in at like 11:30 at night. I order a couple tacos, hand them this bill. I think it was the manager even, I didn't know at the time, but she just held it up, looked for the strip watermark, and cashed it. So I was like, it was a relief, you know, because I was really paranoid and nervous about doing it. I'd never broken a counterfeit bill myself before like that. I'd always just sell them to people. But she took it, no problem. So that kind of gave me some confidence. I think the next day, went to a couple more places, and they just mark it with a pen and break it. It's cool. Okay, my confidence is building up some more. You know, and after that, you know, I made a few $100s, which was great. I paid for the hotel room for the night. You know, it prolongs this situation I'm in. You know what I mean? At least I can get by for another couple days. So then I go back to the hotel and I start printing out, like, I think probably $1,000 worth. Next day I go and I break them all, $1,000 worth. Boom, 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 boom. Out of that $1,000, you know, you buy some for 10, 20 bucks, you get the change. So out of that $1,000, I probably got like 800 bucks in a day, which was great. You know what I mean? That was, in that situation, living out of a hotel with 4 kids and my wife, getting 800 bucks for a few hours worth of just driving around, going to stores. It was, you know, I knew I was like really onto something. I was like, okay, I probably spent about 1,200 bucks so far. They all passed, no problem at all. So I started to get serious about this now. I was like, okay, well, this is a chance to not only get through this financial situation I'm in, but maybe I could like get ahead doing this, you know what I mean? So I go back again and I print another 1,000. Next day, go out, bust them all. They all pass. I was like, well, shit, okay. You know what I mean? Now I got like 1,500 bucks in my pocket. The hotel room's paid for. You know what I mean? Things were looking good. Then I went to a CVS pharmacy, whatever, the drugstore. I go buy like a Red Bull or something, you know, go buy something, hand her the $100 bill, and this chick marks it with the pen. And CVS's have the little black lights on the cap of the counterfeit detection pen. So she marks it with the pen, it marks right, and then she turns this black light on and holds it to the bill. So the strip in a $100 bill is supposed to glow red. And I knew that, but I didn't really, I guess, know about the black lights on the pens, or I didn't consider it or something. But either way, she holds it, the pen to it, it doesn't glow red. But she's like, huh, that's weird. Holds it up again, looks for the strip, the watermark, marks it again with the pen, it marks yellow. So she takes it anyway, gives me the change. And it was like a close call, you know what I mean? She shouldn't have accepted that bill. The strip didn't glow red, so I knew after that that I had to beat this little feature. I needed to make those strips glow red somehow. And my first thought was highlighters. I could get a pink highlighter and draw a line on it or whatever. But then you could see, you know, the highlighter, it's not invisible. It needs to be invisible but glow in the black light. So I drew a strip with a colored the strip with the highlighter before I glued the two pieces together. But so you couldn't really see the pink. But then when you held it up to the light, the strip looked kind of dark. So it just wasn't right. So, but since we were living at a hotels, the kids were kind of bored all the time. We'd always buy them little toys, dollar store stuff. We ended up a month ago buying them my daughter this little diary that you could write in the diary, and it's invisible until you shine this black light on it and it glows to kind of keep your diary private or whatever. And I noticed that, so I was like, oh shit, that's exactly what I need, but I just need it in red ink. Because the little diary pen she had glowed like yellow or whatever. So I just go on to, like, I think it was like Alibaba or Wish.com or DHgate, one of those kind of websites, and I type in invisible ink UV pen, and sure enough they pop up. I find one in red ink. It was like $2 or $3 for this pen. I order it. I send it to the hotel we were staying at, actually. You know, so it took a couple weeks to come in the mail, but in that time I just avoid CVS's because I knew that they had the blacklight. And I was spending like $500 a day, $1,000 a day in these bills, and I hadn't had a problem yet besides that CVS with the blacklight. So eventually the pens come in the mail, and I start just taking a ruler over the strip, drawing a line with this invisible ink UV pen. Shine the black light on it and it glows red perfectly. It looks perfect. So I beat that, so I felt confident again. I started going to CVS's even. You know, did that for another couple months until I went to one store. I forget which store it was, but some cashier took the bill, she marked it with the pen, held it up, looked for the strip and the watermark, and then she started scratching the shirt, is what they say, where you run your fingernail along the texture of the shirt. And I at this point, I had never heard of that like technique that cashiers do or whatever. So I remember I was standing there watching her, and I asked her, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, because she was sitting there doing this, and I was like, is there a problem? What are you doing to my bill? And she's like, oh, it's, what they tell us to do. It's called scratch the shirt. You feel the texture in the bill. She explains it to me. I was like, okay, that's weird. She's like, I don't feel any texture in this. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's weird. So I'm like, did you mark it with the pen? It's real, isn't it? You know what I mean? Playing with it. And she's like, yeah, I marked it with the pen. It marked good. I just don't feel any texture. But, that's weird. She takes it anyway, though. Gives me the change. So again, close call. So I determined I need to beat that feature as well. Do something to give this bill texture. So I start going to Hobby Lobbies, looking for something that I may be able to, resemble texture on this bill. I end up finding a fine tip glue pen for embossing. It's basically just like a ballpoint pen, except instead of ink, it has invisible adhesive in it. I find that, and I take the bill and I just draw little lines on his shirt to where it's kind of this rigid texture. And I scratch it myself, and I can feel some texture. So I was like, perfect, you know what I mean? So as I went along, these bills I were making progressively got better and better. And during all this time, I would also edit constantly. I'd, touch up the little digital image of the watermark that I had, kind of delete any bleed or blur that was on the image, brighten the resolution, sharpen it, so after a few months of doing this, I got the bills, the bills started looking better and better and better, until I finally kind of had something that, like, pretty much every security feature was beat, and the resolution looked fantastic, because I would edit it for hours every day. And, during all this time, I also, since I still had a drug habit, I would, rip off drug dealers with these bills on top of breaking them. So Knoxville has a lot of drug dealers from out of town, because dope's kind of expensive in Knoxville in comparison to bigger cities like Atlanta or Detroit or Cleveland or Chicago or whatever. So a lot of these dope boys can get a brick in Detroit for like $25,000 and then come down to Knoxville, and you know, a brick for $25,000 is $25 a gram, and it's really high quality, you know, fentanyl or heroin or whatever. So then you can cut that brick to 2 bricks, so you're then getting it for $12.50 a gram, and the price of heroin in Knoxville is like $100 a gram. So a lot of these people come from Detroit and Atlanta and Cleveland and Chicago, come to Knoxville to sell their dope. So they don't know a lot of people. They're just going to the city to sell dope because it's more expensive here. But they don't know anybody. So they go up to random people. If you look like you're a drug addict at the gas station, someone could very well walk up to you and be like, yo, you know, fuck with me, you know, here's my number. If you fuck with boy, hit me up. So that happened to me quite frequently. And obviously, you know what I mean, I'd take their number and I'd rip them off with these counterfeit bills. So I did that to a lot of different people. Tons of different people. And you know, most of the time at first I just get them, buy a gram from them, give them the fake money, get the dope, never call them again. Some people, the dope was really good, and I could tell that they didn't know that the bills were fake, so I'd continue ripping them off. I'd keep calling them every day for more heroin. Eventually, a few of the people, you know, found out the bills were fake one way or the other, got pissed off. I'd just kind of avoid their phone. I was living at a hotel. It was like no one could find me. So, yeah, I mean, if you found out the bills were fake, I just wouldn't answer your phone calls anymore. And some of the people found out the bills were fake, but the bills looked so good, they were kind of like just impressed, and they saw an opportunity in me, and they wanted to, you know, buy them from me. Or they'd be like, hey, those bills were fucking fake, bro. Like, instead of giving me $100 for a gram, just give me $400 for a gram in fake money. So after months of doing that, I ended up kind of building a little network of a bunch of different drug dealers that would either accept my counterfeit bills for heroin or buy them from me when they were going to re-up with, you know, if they're going up to Detroit to buy a brick for the month, they'd be like, hey, give me 10 grand worth of these fake bills for $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. So, you know, months and months go by, and I'm building these relationships with all these drug dealers, that once a month or so they wanted to buy 10 grand of counterfeit currency from me. And you know, eventually all these businesses in Knoxville, I had been to like every single store in Knoxville, at least once or twice. So it got to the point to where the resources would, you know, dry up in Knoxville. I started seeing signs on a lot of, like, I went to a lot of dollar stores, like Family Dollar, Dollar General, stuff like that. And I started seeing signs on their front door saying, we do not accept $100 bills. So I was like, oh shit, you know what I mean? It got to a point where I just, there was no more places to bust these bills at in Knoxville because I'd been everywhere multiple times. So, you know, I eventually start taking road trips to different cities, kind of branching out. So, you know, I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee a lot. All the little small towns in Georgia, North Georgia. I went to Atlanta frequently. Then I ended up meeting this one drug dealer from Cleveland, and he needed a ride up to Cleveland so he could re-up. So I saw that as an opportunity, and I was like, shit, I'll drive you up there and I'll bust bills, you know what I mean? So we start going to Cleveland so he can re-up dope, and I can bust bills throughout the city. And, you know, he'd want my bills to re-up with, so we just had this good little system going. And the way I was manufacturing these bills was sandwiching 2 sheets of Bible paper together, because Bible paper is really thin and opaque to where you could, you know, you could sandwich 2 sheets together and the thickness was just right, but it was also opaque to where you couldn't see the strip and watermark through the bill unless you held it up to the light. As well as Bible paper is, or certain types of scritta paper, is cotton, linen, rag, just like currency. For some reason, through the the manufacturing process of Bible paper. They must not bleach the paper or something like most paper. So it glows a dull purple just like money does. So when you hold a black light to it to check the color of the strip, the Bible paper glows purple just like money. So Bible paper was a perfect, perfect type of paper to use. But I looked into ordering Bible paper in bulk, and the only places I found to buy it was like these big manufacturing companies that only sell it in these giant reams. It would come on a pallet in a fucking freight truck, so I'd have to, sign for that. I need a fucking forklift just to move this pallet of paper. So I mean, that at the time wasn't an option for me to order this paper in bulk. So I would go to bookstores and just rip out the blank pages. I went to a lot of like thrift shops. They usually have a book section with a lot of Bibles in them. All the bookstores, Walmarts usually have a little Bible section in their book section. My wife before had a little nonprofit charity that she would take donations of diapers and clothes and Bibles and distribute them to families in need. So I kind of got some Bibles that way. I had a bunch of different ways of acquiring this blank Bible paper. Obviously, living out of hotels, hotels usually have a Bible in the nightstand. I'd always take a few pieces out of the Bible. Sometimes I'd ask for another Bible, and just to get, you slowly get this Bible paper, but it accumulates. So one day, I was at a hotel, and there wasn't a Bible in the nightstand, so I waved down the maintenance man and asked if he could bring a Bible to my room. I could tell that the maintenance guy at this hotel was kind of like a drug addict, you know what I mean? So I start talking to him, and he says, yeah, we don't keep them in there, but they're available upon request. So I said, well, yeah. I'm like, what, you have boxes of Bibles in the maintenance closet then? And he's like, yeah. So basically I offer this guy like $100 or a gram of dope, I forget exactly, but I offer him this to just give me all these Bibles. He didn't know why I wanted, 5-6 boxes full of Bibles, but he wanted $100 or a gram of dope or whatever, so he did it. I get all these boxes, I go through each one, rip out all the blank pages, and I had a nice little stack of Bible paper just from this one maintenance guy at this hotel. So, thinking, I'm living at hotels, so I start doing that at pretty much every hotel throughout Knoxville. The guy from Cleveland started talking to people he knew up in Cleveland, and I had all these different maintenance men from different cities bringing me boxes full of Bibles. So, I was able to acquire a lot of Bible paper, just about as much as I needed, but it was a task in itself. Going to bookstores, going to thrift shops, contacting these maintenance people, doing all this stuff just to acquire this Bible paper. And then, obviously the manufacturing process of making the bills, and then traveling around to different cities to bust the bills, as well as having Knoxville as my main kind of hub, because I was selling them in bulk to all these different drug dealers as well. I kind of had to travel to a city, come back to Knoxville, travel to a city, come back to Knoxville. So I couldn't branch off very far. I ended up going to Lexington, Louisville, Cleveland, Detroit, Columbus, Ohio, Akron, all these cities within kind of a 5-6 hour radius of Knoxville. But I'd always have to come back to Knoxville because, first of all, I was a heroin addict, so all my dealers were in Knoxville. So I'd buy a couple 8 balls of dope, make a road trip to a city, get some Bible paper, make some bills, bust some bills. After about a week, I'd run out of dope. I'd need to come back to Knoxville. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of just traveling around, living at hotels, dealing with drug dealers. It was a pretty hectic, chaotic life, really. It was fun, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, trying to support children, hiding this job I had from my kids. you know, dealing with drug addiction. You know, it was just kind of a fucking crazy time. But again, like I said, don't get me wrong, it was definitely thrilling and fun. I made a lot of money, have a lot of memories, a lot of experiences, but it was kind of chaotic. So eventually, that guy from Cleveland, we were supposed to go up to Cleveland together. There was one specific maintenance man that was going to give me like 5 boxes of Bibles up there. I wanted to bust bills throughout the city. He was going to buy like about, I think, a brick of heroin. And we were going to go up there together to do this little system we had. We were supposed to leave on a Friday evening. About Friday afternoon, my wife and I get pulled over, and the cop runs my ID, and I had a warrant out of Blount County, Tennessee. So it was just for a little failure to appear. But he even said, he's like, I'm sorry. It looks like it's a failure to appear for some traffic tickets or something, but he's like, I gotta take you to jail. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, fuck, okay. I tell my wife before I get arrested, I'm like, bond me out as soon as you can. I finally get to Knox County Jail. I get there. I call my wife in booking. She says, she's like, I talked to the bail bondsman. We can't get you out because it's a hold from Blount County. So you gotta wait there until transit picks you up, takes you to Blount County, and then you can bond out instantly. So I was like, motherfucker. You know, I sit in jail all Friday night, Saturday night, transit finally comes Monday. As soon as I get to Blount County, I bond out, and I'm out. But the guy from Cleveland, this guy E, I'll say his name because he's the motherfucker that set me up, but so E ended up going to Cleveland without me. Which, you know, whatever, was fine with me. I was just happy to be out of jail. But at this point, we were renting a house together, me and this guy E. Like, well, throughout all these years of me doing this, I'd rent a house for a few months and then, you know, go back to living at hotels, and then rent another house for a little while and go back to living at hotels. Like, I never liked putting my name on anything, so when I rented these houses, it would be, you know, I'd just rent it through like a landlord off the books or what, you know what I mean? It just kind of, so I just rent it for a few months. It's not like I was signing these year-long leases or anything. So this one house, me and this guy E from Cleveland, we start renting it. We're living together for probably 3-4 months at this point. You know, we're supposed to go to Cleveland. I get arrested. He left without me. I come home, and this chick that was running dope for him while he was away told me, she's like, you know, E told me not to tell you this, but he went up to Cleveland without you, and he ended up getting arrested up there. So, you know, I instantly realized, like, that she said he told her not to tell me that he got arrested, which is just sketchy as fuck, obviously. Like, there's no reason that he would not want me to know that he got arrested. I assume he's cooperating. I knew he had $5,000 of my counterfeit bills. He was taken up there with him to re-up with. So, you know, whether he got caught with my counterfeit bills or he went up there already re-upped and then got arrested, he got caught with like a kilo of heroin. Either way, it wasn't looking good. So, in this house that we were renting, I had a perfect setup. In this back room, I had, you know, a couple computers. I had like 4 different printers that could just run in cycles. I had a big light board to line everything up with so you could see through the bills and line them up before I glued them together. Cut everything on. I had a ventilation fan with an exhaust blowing out the window so I could spray the bills with a lacquer spray, and it would suck the lacquer fumes out of the window. You know, I had a good setup, but when she said he got arrested up in Cleveland, I packed everything up and went to a hotel. So, you know, I live at hotels for a couple days. I'm still filling orders from all these other drug dealers that I'm doing business with, still busting bills throughout Knoxville. You know, at businesses I hadn't already been to, or doubling down on some or whatever. And I was started to produce an order for $6,000 from this group of Detroit vice lords that I was doing business with. So one morning, I start printing this $6,000 for these Detroit guys, and I get a phone call, and it's from E. He's like, "Hey man, I'm back in Knoxville. You know, I had to go up to Cleveland without you. My bad, bro. Blah blah blah." I was like, "It's all good, man. Don't worry about it." He's like, "Why aren't you at the house?" And I was like, I told him, I was like, "I just left, bro. I'm traveling around. I'm gonna, you know, stay at hotels for a little while, bus bills." Oh, I didn't say this over the phone. I was just like, you know, I'm just staying at hotels, traveling around. And he was like, "Okay, well," he's like, "I got those boxes of Bibles for you from that guy. Let's meet up." And I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm not in town. I don't want to meet up, bro." I was like, "In fact, let me just call you later." I was like, "I gotta go." And he was like, "Well, hold up. I couldn't re-up in Cleveland. You know, can you get me 700 grams from your Detroit people?" And so at this point, you know, I knew what he was trying to do, because we never talk over the phone. So for him to ask me for 700 grams of heroin over the phone, and I knew he just got out of jail, but he doesn't know that I know. So I know he's trying to set me up right now. So I'm very vague on this phone call. He asked me for the dope, and I say straight away, I'm like, "Bro, I don't sell dope. You know I don't sell dope. That's not my thing. Why are you asking me for this?" And he's like, "Well, I know you don't sell dope, but, you know, I know you know a bunch of people. I figured you could help me out, middleman this deal for me." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not getting involved in your drug shit." And, you know, he was kind of begging at that point. "Come on, man. I know you know these people. Just help me out." And, you know, finally I kind of snapped and was like, "Bro, you just got arrested up in Cleveland. You know what I mean? You told Summer not to tell me that you got arrested, bro. You're acting sketchy. You're obviously cooperating. I'm not getting you any dope. I don't sell dope. You're trying to set me up for things that I don't even do. You know, that's fucked up. Goodbye." I hang up. But I'm thinking, I didn't admit to anything over the phone. If he brought the police to our house, when they got there, there was no evidence of counterfeiting, because I made sure I got everything. So I was thinking, like, okay, he's trying to set me up, but I didn't admit to anything. They've got no evidence on me. It's all hearsay. They're probably building a case on me now, but I didn't think that they would be looking for me to arrest me or raid my hotel room. And if they were, I didn't tell anyone which hotel I was staying at. I thought I was safe at that moment. So I go back to printing this 6,000 for these Detroit guys. My wife and our friend, this girl that was staying with us, decide to go shopping. So they tell her, "We're going to go shopping. I'll see you later." I say, "Okay, I'm going to stay here, finish printing this order. I'll see you later." They leave. So I'm in the hotel room, got everything printed, like one-sided. I hadn't glued them together yet, but everything was printed. I started spraying the bills with the first coat of lacquer, and I hear a knock on the door. So I go and look through the peephole, and it's just blacked out. So I was kind of confused at that moment. Like I said, I didn't think the police would be looking for me to arrest me or anything, because I didn't admit to anything. They didn't find anything at the house. I thought they were building a case on me, but I didn't think that, I didn't consider the police being at the hotel room. But the peephole was blacked out. But I don't know. I guess I was just confused at the time. I didn't know if someone was trying to rob me. I didn't think it would be the police, because like I said, I didn't think they had any evidence on me to arrest me. But nonetheless, the peephole blacked out. I yelled through the door, "Go away." You know, they knock again. I look through the window, and right on the edge of the window, I saw two sheriffs. Now, you know, they were obviously standing. They weren't standing right in front of the window so I could see, but they were trying to hide, but I saw them. So I knew at that point they found me. They're going to kick the door in any minute. So I start trying to flush these fake one-sided bills that I printed down the toilet. I flush it, it goes down. I throw some more in, go to flush it, and it just blub, 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 went down. So I guess they shut the water off, because E told them that, you know, I could sell, or I had, or could get fucking kilos of heroin or whatever. So they expected me to have a large, you know, quantity of drugs on me. Nonetheless, there was all these fake bills floating in the toilet. So I'm frantic. I try to hide the laptop, one of the laptops I had. You know, at that point there was nowhere to dispose of evidence. So I just knew I was fucked. They start kicking the door in. Boom, 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 boom. I was at the Extended Stay Hotel in West Knoxville off of Parkside Drive. I guess they've got like steel reinforced doors. So it took them a good probably 5 minutes to kick the door in finally. But while they're sitting there, boom, 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 just banging on it, I knew there was nothing I could do. There was nowhere I could go. I couldn't get rid of a computer and a printer and, you know what I mean, in the 2 minutes that they're kicking the door in. And so I had, like, I think a gram or two of fentanyl on me. I knew I was going to jail. I pour out a little bit of this dope, snort a line, light a cigarette, sit on the bed, just sit there smoking while they're boom, 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 boom. Eventually, the door flies in. They fucking rush in. There's probably 20, 30, you know, Knox County sheriffs, KPD. There was the organized crime unit, the Tennessee Drug Task Force, multiple different agents with a Secret Service patch. You know, and they slam my ass on the ground, handcuff me, sit me up, put me in the chair in this hotel room, and the Drug Task Force guy comes up. He's this big juice monkey motherfucker, tattoos all over him, and he starts trying to like interrogate me or whatever. He basically says, you know, we know what you've been up to. We know that you're dealing with multiple different kilo level dealers from Detroit and Cleveland and blah blah blah. He's like, the jig's up, we already know, so tell us, you know, who all these drug dealers that you're dealing with. And you know, at that point I basically, like, I knew, you know what I mean, like, I'm not one to cooperate, but I knew that I was going to jail either way for this counterfeiting shit. The Secret Service is here. Even cooperating with Drug Task Force isn't going to help me with the Secret Service. So I knew even if I did try to talk to this dude, it wouldn't help me. So I basically told him to go fuck himself. I said, I want to talk to a lawyer. I'm not talking to you. He got all pissed off. Fucking storms out. Whatever. They walked me down, put me in this paddy wagon. I already knew at that point that E was the one that, you know, facilitated this raid. But I get in the paddy wagon that was in the parking lot, and my wife was in the opposite side of this paddy wagon. In like the female side. I couldn't see her, but I knew she was there. And of course she confirmed my suspicion. She said, yeah, I talked to the Secret Service agent, it was E. He's the one that set you up, blah blah blah. So I guess when my wife and her friend left to go shopping, they were staking out our car and pulled her over immediately and arrested her. So they triangulated the location of my cell phone when I talked to E. So they knew the vicinity I was in. They didn't know, you know, which hotel room I was in, but they just sat, but they knew my car. So they sat and waited until my wife went to the car, and then they arrested her, found the hotel room key on her, knew which room I was in, all this. So basically, you know, I go to Knox County Jail, originally on state charges of criminal simulation over $60,000. I knew the feds were gonna pick it up because I knew the quantity of these bills I was producing. I saw all these agents, the Secret Service agents, so I knew the feds were gonna pick it up, and I figured they were charging me on state charges until the feds could go through my computer, compile evidence, build a case on me, and then indict me, which I was absolutely right with all that. But so I go to Knox County Jail on state charges of criminal simulation. You know, I'm sitting in there for a few months, 3-4 months or so, before the feds finally indict me. About once every 2 weeks, my public defender in the state would come see me, and every time she came and saw me, the amount of bills they found just got higher and higher. At first, I think it was like 67,000. That was like the first time she saw me. She's like, yeah, they can link you to 67,000 in these counterfeit bills. And then a couple weeks later, she comes and sees me again. It's like, oh, it's at like 82,000 or whatever it is. And then a couple more. She's like, oh, it's at 110,000. She's like, the feds are probably going to pick this up. I say, I already know. You know, eventually it keeps getting higher. The state drops my charges. The feds come, serve me the indictment. It was a 5-count indictment for, let's see, it was conspiracy to counterfeit U.S. obligations, sale and manufacture of counterfeit U.S. obligations, a couple counts of uttering counterfeit U.S. obligations, and one other one I don't even know. But so I plead not guilty at first because I know I can submit a change of plea later. So I plead not guilty so I can attempt to get out on pretrial release, which they ended up letting me out on pretrial with the condition that I go to rehab and go to a halfway house while I'm out on pretrial. So I do that. I, you know, get off this dope that I was on, go to this halfway house. A month or two after being out, my lawyer in the feds now is coming to see me pretty regularly. And she, you know, said, the Secret Service wants to talk to you. So I was like, okay, you know, we'll go talk to them, see what they have to say. They bring me in this room in the federal building in downtown Knoxville. You know, and they basically say, okay, Jeff, at this point we found $380,000 in your counterfeit bills. We're still getting about 10 grand a week in that's hitting the bank. He's like, we're still stacking up, you know, the evidence against you and the amount of money that we're finding. So he basically said, after $100,000, it's an enhancement. The next enhancement's at $1 million. He's like, we found about 400,000 already. We're still finding a bunch though. So he's like, with that enhancement at over $100,000, he's like, you're looking at about 3 years in prison. Which, I mean, even that wasn't that bad, because when I was originally charged in the state, they said I was looking at like 8 to 12 years in Tennessee state prison. So when the feds said, you know, you're looking at 3, I was relieved already. But then they basically offered me a deal. They said, you know, if you plead guilty on this, we will not charge your wife with anything. We'll drop all charges on her. We won't even list her in the indictment. The Secret Service agent was cool, actually. His name was Special Agent Greg Watson. He was, I could tell he was very impressed with the quality of the bills I was making, because he told me, he was like, man, most of my day is just running around to these different banks and businesses tracking down fucking prop money and like garbage photocopied, you know, just, he's like, it's really rare that we actually see a professional counterfeiter with, you know, really high quality counterfeits. He's like, it gets annoying to run around and chase around these kids ordering prop money off Amazon. He's like, so, he's like, at first I was pissed at you because my phone was just blowing up all day, every day for years about all these bills hitting banks and businesses and stuff. But, so he was like, yeah, at first I was fucking pissed at you, but he's like, now that we caught you, he's like, I'm impressed. So I was like, well, you know, thanks. You know, what do you say to that? But, so anyway, he, you know, he basically said, I know you and your wife had a drug problem. You all have kids. He's like, I don't want you and your wife to go to prison for this and your kids go to foster care or something. He's like, I don't want to ruin your children's lives over this mistake. You guys have a drug problem. You know what I mean? He's like, you went to rehab. You're clean now. So I'm willing to offer you this good deal. Plead guilty. We won't charge your wife with anything. Your kids will stay with their mother. And we'll keep the restitution amount under $100,000, which avoids that enhancement. So he's like, with that, without that enhancement, you'll be looking at 2 years instead of 3. So I was like, okay. And he's like, but on top of that, if you're willing to cooperate with the Secret Service, explain how you made these bills, you know, tell us who taught you and where you learned everything, and you know, show us exactly how you made these bills and let us film it. He's like, we'll use that as a training video for future Secret Service agents on counterfeiting trends and techniques. And he's like, and we'll consider that cooperation because you're facilitating the future catch of criminals or whatever. He's like, basically, you'll be helping the Secret Service catch future counterfeiters. So we'll give you substantial assistance for that. And he was like, with that cooperation, he's like, if you make this training video, well, you know, and avoid that enhancement, that 3 years will get knocked down to 2 because of the enhancement, and then we'll give you cooperation credit on top of that, which is a 30% reduction. So, you know, 30% knocked off of 24 months, I'd be looking at the range of 10 to 16 months. So, yeah, I took that deal right away. That was a great deal. I'm really blessed for it. It worked out great. So, you know, me and my lawyer submitted the change of plea with the courts. I, you know, pleaded guilty. The Secret Service flew the head of the counterfeiting department from D.C. and a film crew down to Knoxville. I met them at the Secret Service headquarters in downtown. I walk in this room. They had a big table with all the evidence that they found in my hotel room. I had like counterfeit gold bullion bars, like fake Pamp Swiss and Cougarons and all this fake gold that I was fucking with or whatever. But they didn't charge me for that, so I don't think they could though, but anyway. But yeah, they had all this evidence. They had printers, computers, all these different sprays, color shifting pigments and makeup and different types of pens and all this stuff that I'd experiment with. They had it all on this table. I walk in this room, they have lights and they mic me up and have a film crew there and all this craziness. And they basically are just like, okay, go. And I was like confused at first. I'm like, well, what the fuck? What do you mean go? What do you want me to do? And they're like, just start talking. Tell us how you made these bills, you know, who taught you, how you learned everything. And then he's like, you know, start making a couple bills and explain every step of the process as you do it. So, you know, I felt kind of awkward. Never done anything like that before. It was weird. But yeah, I started basically telling them no one taught me anything. I read this book when I was younger. It inspired me. I read a lot. I explained the different, I found a memo that was actually published by the Secret Service on current counterfeiting trends and techniques, and it had all these basically ideas of how I could counterfeit. So I took little bits and pieces from that. I found a patent on Google Patents it's called Motion by Crane and Company, which is Crane & Company is the company that actually manufactures the paper for the U.S. government to make money. And they patented the security technology of that 3D security ribbon on the new Blue Notes. They patented that technology. So I was able to find that patent and through that figure out how to counterfeit the 3D security ribbon on the Blue Notes perfectly. So I explained that to them, and they were shocked that, you know, I figured out how to do this by just Googling stuff and actually finding the patent information. But you know, I explain everything to them. I make a couple bills. I'm on camera. I finally am finished with them, and I start spraying this lacquer on the bills. I'm spraying this lacquer on them so it'll create a clear coat. That way the counterfeit detection pens will mark properly on the bills. And I start spraying this lacquer. And the cameraman was like, oh my God, like it stinks, you know what I mean? Because I didn't even realize I'm inside this little, you know, this office with all these people. I'm spraying lacquer. My lawyer runs out of the room. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry guys, you know, this stuff must stink, my bad. The Secret Service agent was like, no, it's cool, keep going, keep going. I was like, okay, whatever, spray it, finish, you know, finish up everything. And we're done. I walk out and my lawyer was like, oh, that stuff was really strong, it stunk. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even, you know, think that I'm inside with all you guys. I shouldn't have sprayed it. And she was like, oh no, it's good, I'm pregnant. So I had to leave. And I was like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I felt bad. But anyway, you know, did that. Eventually I ended up going to sentencing. And sure enough, the Secret Service wrote me like a real nice letter, saying how grateful they were for my cooperation, how the bills I manufactured were, they basically said, although the bills he made were the best we've seen in a long time, but he helped us tremendously by explaining how he did that, and, the Secret Service plans to catch future criminals based on his help, and blah, 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 blah. So the judge took that in consideration, gave me the 30% reduction, and gave me the low end of my range of 10 to 16 months, so sentenced me to 10 months in federal prison. So from there, they mailed me a letter to self-surrender to USP McCreary, the camp at USP McCreary. I was supposed to surrender there, I forget which date. So basically, I kind of fucked up. About 2 weeks before I was supposed to self-surrender, I ended up fucking relapsing. I was basically just, fuck it, I'm going to prison anyway. I start getting dope in Knoxville. And, I end up catching a little charge for possession. They caught me with like 3 grams of heroin, 2 weeks before I was supposed to self-surrender. I fucking do this dope. I wake up in Knox County booking like, oh fuck, with a U.S. Marshal hold. So I basically, sit in jail 2 weeks early on these charges that the judge eventually just dropped because it was just simple possession charge, and the judge knew I was being sentenced to federal prison anyway, so they just gave me 2 weeks time served on this simple possession. From there, I start serving my federal sentence. I sit in Knox County jail for probably three more weeks, and then the marshals pick me up, take me to Blount County Jail, which is the federal holding facility for East Tennessee. I sit there for about a month. They finally come get me, take me to Laurel County, Kentucky, in London, Kentucky. That's like the federal holding facility for Kentucky. I sit there for about a month. Finally, they come get me from there, take me up to Lexington, and that was the compound that I served the rest of my sentence on. And Lexington's a FMC Lexington. It's an old prison. I think they built it in like 1900 or something, 1902, something like that. And since I I was supposed to self-surrender at McCreary at a camp, but since I copped that extra little heroin charge right before I was to self-surrender, I guess that bumped my security level up in the BOP. So instead of going to the camp at McCreary, they sent me to a low in Lexington, which it's really an administrative low. So like, since it's a federal federal medical center, it officially is an administrative low. It can hold low, medium, and high security inmates because it's a medical center. But since COVID hit, they stopped transferring people to the medical center to avoid the spread of COVID or whatever. So they started just using FMC Lexington as just a regular, prison, which is like it was a low security by any means. There were a few inmates there that were from USPs and mediums and stuff, but for the most part, it was as far as I know, your standard low. It wasn't that bad, really. You had to quarantine for 30 days, the first 30 days in, and the last 30 days when you're getting released, you have to quarantine in and out of the prison. So, I basically, the first 30 days being there, I was in, the shoe, but it wasn't bad. The trustees came, instantly gave me a bag of coffee, some ice. The trays were fat because, they knew we were in quarantine. I finally go to my unit. It was kind of a weird situation because I'm from Florida, I've got a Florida tattoo on me, but I'm 074 from Tennessee. That my federal inmate number or whatever ends in 074, which means I'm from East Tennessee. But at the time I had an address in North Carolina, so like when I walk into the unit, all these different cars came to me, like the Florida car, the Tennessee car, and the Carolina car all came to me. And so I kind of like almost had like my pick as far as like which car I wanted to belong to or whatever. Which in Lexington, Kentucky, the Florida car was pretty small. There was probably only like 10 guys on the whole compound from Florida. So, you know, I fucked with some of those Florida guys, but basically the Tennessee car was the people I fucked with for the most part. And, you know, the Tennessee car was pretty big because we were just outside of Tennessee in Lexington. So, you know, but prison was kind of different than... This is the first time I've been to prison, mind you. It was different than what I expected. I guess I never really realized that people like live life there. Like I've only experienced county jail where it's kind of like in and out. But there are people in, you know, federal prison that, you know, I mean, everyone goes to work and they're staying busy or keeping to themselves. Some people are social. It's just like a, you know, it's a different environment than county jail for sure. Since it was a low security federal prison, it wasn't like super violent like you see on TV or like these USPs that you hear about. You know, it was violent to a certain extent, but it was mostly like fights and stuff. Nobody was getting stabbed at the low. I mean, I've heard a couple stories of in the past of maybe one or two people that got stabbed or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I got along fine. They check my paperwork as soon as I come in, make sure I'm not a chomo. You know, the white boys gave me a little care package. They gave me some shoes, some sweats, you know, some soups and coffee and stuff like that, because when your paperwork checks out, you know, usually people will fuck with you and give you a little care package because you're first getting to the compound. So yeah, it was not bad. I spent most of my time just you know, working out, going to the rec yard, doing laps, push-ups, pull-ups. You know, I worked in the kitchen. I shot a lot of pool, played a lot of chess, and you know, you work every day or 5 days a week. You know, so it worked out for me because working in the kitchen, I was in the dish room. So all the food that people smuggle out of the kitchen, you kind of have to do it in the dish room because that's like in the way back, you know, where there are no cameras, no one really goes back there, none of the guards. So like everybody would take food, go hide it in the dish room until the end of their shift, and then smuggle it out of the dish room. And since I was in control of the dish room, I kind of was able to, you know, essentially tax people for storing the food in there. I had this dude I know from Georgia that was in veggie prep, so he would smuggle out all these green peppers and onions and cucumbers and give them to me to store in the dish room, and then when he was off work he would give me half and he'd take half. So every day I was able to smuggle out in my boots or, you know, strap food to you. It's fucking pathetic, but hey, it's a way to live. But yeah, I was able to make like probably about anywhere from 2 to 8 books of stamps every day from my little food hustle in the kitchen, which is good. I mean, if you've ever been to federal prison, you know if you can make 5 flat books a day, that's not bad, because a flat book, so like currency in prison is stamps. You can buy a book of stamps. It's called a flat because they're all connected. A book of stamps on commissary was like $11. As soon as it hits the compound, it gets dropped down to like $7. So, you know, if you're making 5 books a day selling these peppers, you're making $35 a day, you know, which is fucking good in prison. So, you know, with that, I was able to have anything I needed. I mean, I had people putting money on my books too, but, you know, when you're in prison, even for the short amount of time I was in there, you never really want to call people and ask for money, you know what I mean? I mean, I had a couple people you know, hold me down and give me, you know, money on my books. But it was nice to get, you know, 5 flats a day, just, you know, selling peppers and onions and stuff. And besides that, I was able to meet a lot of people and make a lot of connections, because every day after work I'd go walk around the whole unit being like, you know, I got peppers for sale, you know, meats, whatever. Like, I was the guy that sold food, so a lot of people fucked with me. You know, I would give this one guy who was from Knoxville, actually, I'd give him, you know, chicken, peppers, and pickles every day for tattoos. Like, he was the tattoo guy. But yeah, you know what I mean, it's, like I said, it wasn't exactly what I expected prison to be like, but it was fine. I didn't have a long stay though, so, you know what I mean, I could imagine being in there for 10, 20 years would drive a motherfucker crazy. But yeah, I mean, I only did, by the time I got to the compound, I think I was there for like 7, 8 months, so it really wasn't that bad for me. I'm very blessed with the situation that I was in and the outcome of it. And you know, now I got out, they had to release me back to Knoxville because my wife and I ended up separating while I was incarcerated. So I had to come back to my sentencing district in Knoxville. You know, hear about all these, you know, these stories about people getting out of prison and struggling so hard to find a job and, you know, make ends meet and whatever. I was very fortunate. As soon as I started looking online for jobs, I found a listing for a print company called Graphical Warehouse in Knoxville. The first place I see, I call, they say, okay, email your resume. I email my resume. 2 days later, he calls me, sets up an interview. I go to the interview. He hires me. First fucking job, first interview I go to, he hires me. So that was great. As soon as he hired me, I had to say, I'm like, by the way, just so you know, I just got out of prison for counterfeiting. I'm on federal probation right now. You know, I hope that's not a problem. You know, they all kind of look at each other and are like, I guess that's cool. Just, you know, you're not still doing it, are you? And I was like, no, it's in my past. I just wanted to, you know, be transparent with you, full disclosure. You know, I was arrested for counterfeiting, just got out of prison. They were cool with it. Great, you know what I mean? Start working there. It's a good job. You know, and then within 3-4 months of me being there, they promote me to, like, basically, like, running the print shop, an ex-counterfeiter, you know what I mean? So I've been super blessed in how everything worked out. You know, yeah, definitely super blessed. I mean, it could have been way worse. I was afraid when they were first indicting me, I was afraid that they'd try and link me up with this guy E's drug conspiracies, because simply driving him up to Cleveland and even being aware of it, I was real nervous that they could hit me as part of this heroin conspiracy, you know what I mean? Which I wasn't involved in any heroin conspiracy, but I was buying heroin from him for personal use and, you know, selling him money so he could do his thing. So I was just nervous that, you know, in my mind I was thinking, you know, they get me a part of this heroin conspiracy as well as the counterfeiting conspiracy, I could be looking at 12, 15 years, you know what I mean? But after all is said and done, I got that 10-month sentence, got a good job right out of prison. I just got my driver's license back after paying $1,000 in tickets, but, you know, things have been going real well for me so far. So, yeah, that's my story. I appreciate y'all watching. Like and subscribe.